Welcome to Click to Learn More, the show that sounds like clickbait.
But it's actually two dorks.
I'm Dorm.
I'm Lidi.
Hi, Lidi.
Hi, Dorm.
So, it's October, officially.
Officially.
And it's also your birth week. So
it is my birth week.
Happy birth week.
I am officially the oldest living organism.
Ah.
And weak. I'm weak physically.
So, it's October.
Yes.
And you know what that means.
Spooky stuff.
Yeah, it's time to talk about real scary stuff.
Yeah, the spookiest of things.
The spookiest stuff imaginable, even.
I'm ready.
Political polling. That was good. So, why am I doing an episode on political polling?
Because you love politics.
I enjoy the politic every now and then, but, you know.
I enjoy a politic or two.
I'll have a politic after dinner.
I'll take my politics on the side, please.
Thank you. Leave a politic on my pillow. So this episode
Leave a politic, take a politic. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
This episode started as an episode on the Bradley effect.
Mm-hmm,
One of the most... Yes, Bradley Cooper. Mm-hmm. One of the most fascinating political theories I know. And then it became just as much about the polls themselves as it did that specific effect.
Okay.
Plus it's real spooky because it's unknown and stuff. Ooh.
Ooh.
I literally wrote ooh in my notes.
I love that you have ooh in your notes.
Sources today include, get ready.
I'm so ready.
How Stuff Works, New York Times, the Pew Research Center, which is a lot of places source their research from the Pew Research Center, is basically the AP of research.
Okay.
Huffington Post, 538, NPR, Politico, and the salt of a CTLM recipe, Wikipedia, because it's in every episode. So,
yep,
what is political polling? I'll tell you. Damn right I did it.
Oh, it's always a little bitter when it comes back on me, you know?
At its core, political polling is a type of public opinion polling, which I'm sorry to myself for the plosives I just put into our audio.
For the plosives,
political opinion... you know what a plosive is?
Yeah, the
Yeah, political opinion polling is what I just said.
I like that alliteration. I'm a fan.
Ideally, it should be a representative of a specific location's thoughts on a political candidate. The types of polls vary from decade to decade. I almost said decade, like... What's up, fat gag?
What up, fat gags?
But there are a core number of polls that have stayed the course throughout modern poll taking.
Okay.
So there are these are the types of polls that you are most likely to see. Benchmark polls. Do you have any guess what that is?
I have no... So this is what's going to be super embarrassing. I don't know anything.
Okay, good.
About...
I didn't either, really.
Politics or how the world works or voting or polling or how... A Cheeto became president. I don't know how any of that worked. I don't know any of that.
President Chester. Benchmark polls are the poll that tells a candidate whether they should run for office or not.
Okay.
So basically, like, it's putting your feelers out there.
So it's like a baseline.
Yeah.
Do you like me or not?
Right.
Check yes or no.
So presidential candidates especially will be part... The way they do these usually is, like, there's just a list of people, some of which who are potential candidates, some of which who aren't, and they'll just throw your name in there. So it's like, how do you feel about Joe Biden running for president? How do you feel about Bernie Sanders running for president? So it's kind of masks the, hey, how do you feel about this one candidate that we're definitely calling about?
Right. Okay.
That's the way those are usually conducted. Brushfire polls, which unfortunately could not find the origin of that name. I don't know why they're called that. Are the polls that tell a campaign how competitive the race will be.
Huh. I wonder if it's because it spreads, like brush fire spreads quickly.
Maybe.
Competition spreads quickly.
And how much money will need to be spent.
Oh, shoot.
So it's pure, like, social awareness stuff.
Okay.
So, like, how much do you know about my candidate? How much do you believe with his values? What do you think about this other candidate? What do you think about this
donate money to this candidate? Okay.
So these are the sort of the... Benchmark polls are sort of what everyone thinks of as a poll, I think. Like, if you get a call from the, whatever committee, Republican Democratic committee from your state or your whatever, that's usually the kind of polls they're taking. Like, what do you think about my candidate? What do you think about our platform? Would you change anything? That kind of stuff.
Is it normally done by phone?
Yes, and we'll get into that how that may actually negatively shape polls in a little bit later.
Okay.
There's also tracking polls, or rolling polls, as I like to call them, roll polls.
Roll polls. Roll polls.
So tracking polls are sort of the new baby of the pollster era. So tracking polls use a lot of computer science. basically what happens with a tracking poll, they're longer term. Data is gathered over a number of days or weeks, and then that creates a moving average of opinion. So,
like Google Trends.
Basically,
like
yes.
Being able to
exactly.
see.
That is the perfect metaphor.
I knew a political thing.
So it's, where's it going to go in 10 days based on these past 20 days? Okay. But it's sort of the new baby. Everybody really likes it. It's been around for a long time, but with computers, it's made a lot easier, of course.
So this will give you a good idea of if you should run for a certain office.
Right. Well, the tracking polls are usually mid-race.
Okay, so this is why they say you're polling at this percent.
Yeah.
Normally, we're doing great. You're polling at this percent. Okay.
So those are usually brush fire polls. Those are usually just like the standard poll.
Okay.
But tracking polls are better for, I think the example I was reading about was, if you have a platform on employment, right? Mm-hmm. And then you survey people, how do you feel about this platform? How do you feel about this platform tomorrow? Then the next day. Then you can kind of shape how you talk about it in debate, or how your message is delivered, how your commercials are phrased, that kind of thing.
Make sure you hit your audience.
Right. So polls are actually really important for political message.
So it's a weird marketing thing.
Yeah, it's basically marketing.
Yeah. Okay, that's a language I understand.
Politics basically is marketing in a way. So
I know this information, by the way, because of Parks and Rec, which is which I am not embarrassed to admit, but that's how I know what I know.
The last one that you'll hear most about, there are other kinds. There's like entrance polls and all these sorts of things, but exit polls are probably the next most popular, and you hear those the most. That's the most popular one you hear about. And an exit poll is probably exactly what you think it is. They're polls taken of people leaving a voting booth. So it's like, you voted, who did you vote for?
Who, why?
Yes.
Okay.
And even those can be off. Which I think is fascinating, because we'll get into it in a minute. They're often how people call races early. So you'll hear like NBC calls Virginia for, whatever. That's usually how they call those. And that has been wrong in a number of cases, but they're often the most concrete polls out there. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dorm, where's that patented click to learn more drama?
That is what I'm thinking.
Where's the intrigue?
Right. You're right.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Polls suck.
Oh, heard it here first.
Polls are made to be snapshots in time. Think about it. You probably had very different opinions about Suicide Squad before and after it released.
Yeah, that's true.
So if someone polled you about what you thought of it before and what you thought of it after, they'd be wildly different.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
Also,
thank you for using that as a reference.
You're welcome. I had a much worse one, and I was like, I'm gonna make it a little chill
because you totally understand exactly where I'm coming from. So.
Yeah. Also, being a pollster is like being a referee in sports, and when I say pollster, I'm referring both to the organizations and the people who run them. Being a pollster is like being a referee in sports. You only notice them when they're bad. It's a thankless job with a city, state, or national pressure on you at all times.
Do you volunteer to do that job?
No, usually it's a lot of times it's like a college will do it. Okay. Like Monmouth has a very big polling institute. This is not meant to dunk on pollsters. They're in a rough line of work.
Yeah.
So polls suck, but that's just the line of work they're in. I'm not going to blame anybody.
Yeah.
A good poll will often miss by 5%.
By 5%.
Now, that may not seem like a lot, but 5% is enough to sway opinion in a tight race, especially if, if a million people are polled or whatever, 5% is huge.
Yeah.
So it really depends on...
That's very true.
...how accurate your poll is, and even a good one is inaccurate in a way.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it now because as much as we like to avoid politics on this podcast, polling played a major factor in the Clinton-Trump race of 2016.
Oh, yeah.
Polls were predicting Hillary win a landslide just days before the election, and then it got narrower and narrower. So what happened? Well, there are a number of theories that lead us down a path of truth as best we can tell. For one, pollsters know polls suck. Mm-hmm. They're aware of this. They try to be as accurate as possible, but even they admit the polls failed at their 2017 national conference. Can I tell you how boring the 2017 National Pollster Conference would be? Are you kidding me?
It's a pollster you think they come around after you have your drink and they're like, chicken or fish? Chicken or fish? How did you feel?
Well, the rest of the table took chicken, so I'm sorry.
How did you feel before you had the chicken? How do you feel now that you've had the chicken?
Exactly. Would you rather have the fish?
Again?
Yeah.
Would you order it again?
Yeah, I just hope they had stripper poles.
Yeah, you know that. Listen, you say it's gonna be boring. They know how to party.
Those polls are out.
Yeah, nobody comes to a poll party not expecting there to be a
party's very good.
Nobody comes to a poll
Bring your
party
swimsuit.
not expecting to see some polls. Bring your swimsuit is about to get wet.
In a moratorium for the polls, they basically said the following were problems that swayed the election. This is directly from the New York Times because I can't speak this talk.
Speak this talk.
Well,
I don't know these words.
Well, it's so jargony. So the three things that they said played the biggest factor in the Trump election in 2016. Undecided voters turned to Trump. A post-election survey by Pew Research and another by Global Strategy Group, a Democratic firm, recontacted people who had taken their polls before the election. They found that undecided and minor party voters broke for Trump by a considerable margin, far more than usual.
Gotcha.
Similarly, the exit polls found that late decision voters supported Mr. Trump by a considerable margin in several states. These three results imply that late movement boosted Trump by a modest margin, perhaps around 2 points. And that's percentage points if you don't know. Likely voter screens may have tilted polls in Clinton direction. This is interesting. I promise. It's hard to make a general statement about whether pollsters' likely voter screens, which try to determine which voters are likely to turn out. Okay. So they kind of try to poll people they know are going to vote.
Oh, right. Because what good does it do
if
asking people who you're going to vote for if they're not going to go vote?
Yes.
Oh, shoot.
It's possible these were biased toward Clinton. There have been at least three publicly presented analyses of pre-election polls conducted via voter files from two Democratic firms, Target Smart and Global Strategy Group, and from the New York Times Upshot Siena survey. All three of these analyses found the turnout was modestly more favorable to Trump than pre-election polls predicted.
Okay.
So turnout, specifically, people who came out to vote, leaned more Trump than what surveys would have suggested.
I mean, if you think about it, that makes sense, right? Because that was the loudest group.
Yes.
At the time.
Yeah.
No matter which side you lean.
Yeah.
That was the loudest group happening.
Sure.
So I remember going to my polling place and I was like the only one out of maybe of the 50 something people, let's say, that were there. I was one of 5 that voted the way that I did. I voted for Hillary, but
same.
One of 5 maybe that would have done it, and it was so obvious when you see them.
Absolutely.
Because they've got the MAGA hats and Trump shirts.
Yeah, people were very proud of that brand. The other one, education weighting, seems to explain a lot. So we're gonna talk about education weighting. Education was a huge driver of presidential vote preference in the 2016 election. Many pollsters did not adjust their samples, a process known as weighting, to make sure they had the right number of well-educated or less educated respondents. It's no small matter since well-educated voters are much likelier to take surveys than less educated ones. About 45% of respondents in a typical national poll of adults will have a bachelor's degree or higher. That's huge.
Yeah.
45%.
That's huge.
Even though the census says that only 28% of adults have said degree. So 28% of the overall population of the United States has a bachelor's degree or higher. But 45% of polls are taken by that 28%. If that makes sense.
Okay, gotcha. Do you think that the whole thing with saying that the people that came out and voted for Trump, do you think that the people that didn't come out and vote thought, there's no way?
Yes.
They thought, it will have to be her.
Right.
I'm not even going to bother to vote. Because there was a bunch of my friends that were like that. Like, I'm not even going to bother and do it.
Yeah.
There's no way he's going to win.
I think the polls being incorrect, when I mentioned, Hillary was in a very steady lead for a long time, even a lot of people had her leading the day of, which was wrong.
Yeah.
I think so many people saw that and thought, oh, Hillary's winning. Yeah. I'm good. I don't need to go today.
No point in going, yeah.
No reason to vote.
Always vote.
Yeah.
Always vote.
Please vote.
Always
Exercise.
vote.
That's the one right you have.
Yeah.
Vote.
It's the one thing you can do that can actually change something.
Yes. Similarly, a bit more than 50% of respondents who say they're likely to vote have a degree. Compared with 40% of voters in newly released 2016 census voting data. This was a big deal in 2016 since Miss Clinton fared very well. That's their writing, not mine. Since Clinton fared very well among well-educated voters.
They said Miss Clinton?
Yeah, and they said Mr. Trump. They were referring to them as candidates.
Okay.
Her lead might have increased by around 4 percentage points in a typical national survey that wasn't weighted by education. The effect shrinks in polls weighted more heavily, including by party registration or past turnout, but there were virtually no public polls that were weighted this way. So basically, and this I'm not saying, and New York Times is not saying, that all smart people voted for Clinton.
Right.
And all educated, that's not even fair.
Right. Quote,
all
unquote.
Educated, quotes. I'm doing air quotes. People voted for Clinton and all, quote unquote, people without a degree voted for Trump. That's not what they're saying. They're just saying that Clinton led in those markets, and that turnout was skewed toward taking a poll.
Gotcha.
Now, the most interesting theory that's not touched upon here, because the pollsters, this isn't like a conspiracy theory, but I don't think pollsters like the idea of the Bradley effect.
Oh. Okay.
We'll get into that. The most interesting theory not touched upon here, because this was New York Times notes from that national convention, right? So they were like, this is what the pollsters are saying went wrong. Which I mentioned at the top of the episode. Now, there are people refuting the fact that this may or may not have affected a large number of polls, but most people think it did play a part.
Okay.
In 1982, Tom Bradley, longtime mayor of Los Angeles, Democratic candidate for governor of California, and a black man, ran against a white man named George Deukmejian, I think is how you say his name. Most polls had Bradley winning quite easily. Even as exit polls were taken, media projected Bradley the winner, and that projection made the front page of San Francisco Chronicle.
Okay.
So people were basically saying Bradley won.
This is it. He swept the polls.
It's Dewey defeats Truman again. However, when the votes were counted, Bradley lost the race. So the Bradley theory was born.
Okay.
The Bradley effect posits that the inaccurate polls were skewed by the phenomenon of social desirability bias.
Oh.
Specifically, some white voters give inaccurate polling responses for fear that, by stating their true preference, they will open themselves up to criticism of racial motivation.
So they actually voted for the white dude, but said they voted for the black dude?
Right, because they didn't want to look racist.
Oh my gosh.
By stating I already read that, sorry. Members of the public may feel under pressure to provide an answer that is deemed to be more publicly acceptable or politically correct. The reluctance to give polling answers have sometimes extended to post-election exit polls as well. Jeez. So they'll even say, oh yeah, I voted for Bradley, when they didn't.
Like leaving the polls after voting.
Yes.
And lying about it.
Yes. Wow. The race of the pollster conducting the interview may factor into voters' answers. For example, if there's a person of color taking the poll, then they may not want to seem racist by voting for the white guy, and they'll lie about it. Bradley effect is fantastically interesting to me.
Huh.
It's wild. I hate that it's a phenomenon, but it's wild.
I've never heard of this.
Now, obviously, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are both white people. But there are two aspects of the Bradley effect that can apply to this election. One, Hillary Clinton's a woman. So racism isn't in play, sexism is.
She's got a uterus, that's a problem.
Two, people may have wanted Trump to win, but embarrassed to openly support him. So I know people who voted for Trump who would never tell you they voted for Trump because they're embarrassed they voted for Trump. Yeah. And that was, I'm not saying now, I'm saying when it happened.
Okay. A lot more of them now, maybe.
Yes, maybe there might be a little bit of buyer's remorse there, but
buyer beware.
This has given way to a new political theory, or I guess more a modification of the Bradley effect, called shy Trump theory.
What?
People who are shy to admit...
It's like an actual theory?
Yeah, shy Trump. You can look up shy Trump. And a lot of people, the first articles that will come up are like, it maybe didn't play as much as a factor as these things that I mentioned earlier did, but they happened, right? Basically, political analysis posit that people were either embarrassed to admit they were voting for Trump or embarrassed to admit they weren't voting for the first female president. Ooh. So same thing here with Bradley. Yeah. Instead of racism, it's sexism.
Yeah.
There are more common ways polls can be wrong, too. Margin of error due to sampling, whether that be in demographic, location, socioeconomic status, or any other factor, is probably the biggest sole reason for mispolling. So basically, all that means is they polled the wrong people.
Yeah.
Which can happen, right? Like if you poll everyone in New York City and no one in Mississippi,
right,
you're probably going to get a widely skewed poll. Now, granted, that's probably not how it's going to work, but even if you get certain pockets of a city or a county or something, that may skew one way or another.
Yeah, which can affect all of it.
Yeah, we'll get into the idea of the spiral of silence, but that kind of plays into that too.
Spiral of Silence would be a great band name.
Isn't that a great name? I love that. I love that name.
Awesome.
From Wikipedia, there's another large source of mispolling, which is non-response bias. Again, this was written beautifully, so I'm not going to try to rewrite it. Since some people do not answer calls from strangers,
fair,
or refuse to answer the poll samples may not be representative samples from a population due to a non-response bias. So basically, non-response bias just means people didn't want to respond.
Fair.
Response rates have been declining and are about 10% in recent years. So that it keeps going down 10%. Because of this selection bias, the characteristics of those who agree to be interviewed may be markedly different from those who decline. That is, the actual sample is biased version of the universe the pollster wants to analyze. So basically it's saying...
And you can only analyze the information you have.
Right, exactly. You can't analyze people who don't answer you.
Yeah.
And what that means is people who... Listen, it's hard to be at home during the day, have a home phone, and want to answer a poll. That's a very select group of people.
Yeah, it is.
And we'll get into why they can't actually call cell phones in a minute.
A
but
certain age group that's more likely to be able to answer those questions.
Right, exactly.
Which might lean a certain way compared to a
different group. And that's also why a lot of polls will show that young people aren't voting before it actually happens, because they don't answer the polls.
Yep.
Well, it's because they're either in school or at work or... work a different shift and can't answer, or, a number of things.
Don't trust the number.
Or don't have a home phone.
Right, yeah.
Which is huge. We'll get into that. But it's fascinating to me that people... There are so many ways polls can be wrong. It almost feels antiquated in a way.
Yeah.
Which the first poll was actually Andrew Jackson when he won president. That was the first poll. It was a straw poll. It was literally a straw poll.
He was crazy.
Yeah. And he won the straw poll of like 500 people.
He ran out with a handful of straw and went, I win!
I won it!
I win! And threw it in some people's faces.
But he won that poll, and it was like reflected in the national data. Okay. And so everybody was like, fucking polls.
Yeah,
that's the way we're going.
That's it.
We can do polls now. And so straw poll is a thing you'll hear now too, which is basically, straw poll is the simplest poll, which is just like, it's 1-to-1. Who are you voting for? Who are you voting for? That's it. There's no outside stuff. It's not trying to track anything. You will still hear straw polls referred to. They're not actual straw polls now. But that's how it went back in the day.
And that's fairly basic, right?
Yeah.
Who you voting for? But at the end of the day, that's all you really need to know.
Yeah.
Because I feel like almost if you start to ask people like, what religion are you, and how old are you, and what how much money do you make a year, and then ask you who you're voting for, like, that might be information that is intimidating.
Yeah.
That now all these people know this stuff about you. Well, they're going to look down on me if I vote this way or this way.
Right.
It may just be faster to just go, who are you voting for?
Yeah.
And then leave it at that.
I think the argument against that is that a lot of times the people running the polls are actually supporters of the candidate, and they want to know what's working and what's not. Because at the end of the day, it's all gonna... The exit poll is the most concrete, but it's also when it's over. Yeah. Right? Like, there's nothing else we can do.
Yeah, it's already done.
If you poll people midway through the election or midway through the campaign or whatever, then you can know how to shift your base.
Yeah. And
that's something you hear referred to a lot in politics, is like shifting bases. And that's not a baseball reference. It's literally shifting your base of voters. So yeah, I think polling is actually really substantial to the movements of a campaign, right? They're like fluid, where, what someone says, and often you'll get crap for this, but what someone says in January is not going to be reflected in October. It's just not. Promises become more realistic.
Yeah.
Campaign ideologies become either concrete or not spoken about.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting dichotomy of truth and marketing in politics that gets blended further and further once you get closer to the election date.
I mean, they start really showing their true colors closer and closer to the election date too, which can change your opinion of them. Right. Or they go off in one direction of like promising things that can't possibly happen, and then
So the opposite of a non-response bias is
a response bias.
You got it. Where people intentionally mislead pollsters.
Oh.
So
intentionally?
Yeah. So they'll answer the call. Whoa. Where did I come from?
They answer the DJ call.
They answer the call.
Answer the DJ call.
So they will answer the call and either mislead because they're annoyed. Like, you called me, I'm just gonna fuck with you.
I'm just gonna waste your time.
And basically, a poll version of a poll troll, TM.
You gotta pay the poll troll to get in. To get into this boy's toll.
And also, the Bradley effect is part of a response bias, right? Like, they're intentionally misleading, they're covering up their, perceived racism, but that's what's happened. As you may know from your time as a real-life crime detective, The way questions are worded can be very misleading
True.
and skew poll results.
Yep.
Tone of the interviewer and pace of the interviewer can also lead to answers that misrepresent those polled. Mm-hmm. So if someone's answering you a bunch of questions, you might not be able to think about it, ruminate, give an educated response, and might just blurt out whatever they're going with.
Yeah.
Also, which granted, this would be a bad method of poll taking. I don't want people to think that you should try to influence people to say what you want them to say.
Yeah.
Because that actually misleads everyone.
Right.
That would mislead the candidate to thinking they have more supporters than they do. That misleads the general public to where they don't go out and vote, like we were saying earlier with the Clinton race. So you don't, as a pollster, which is a word that I've written about 1,000 times, as a pollster, you really want the truth and not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
You would rather hear that your candidate or whatever, and a lot of times these polls are taken by a non-political source, right? Like by a college that doesn't care about the results.
Right.
But sometimes they are taken from the inside, and even then you would want the person to say, I hate your candidate.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, your candidate's okay, because then it just misleads everybody.
Yeah, because, I mean, what if the candidate's like, super cool, we get a ton of support, let's go, let's do this, let's spend a lot of money, and then, whoopsies, people actually hate you.
Or, oh, Iowa, we're good in Iowa.
Yeah.
And then we
won't have to worry about campaigning there.
Right.
We're totally good
Let's
there.
go to Ohio.
Let's
and
go
then
somewhere else.
Iowa flips. And that's how, I mean, honestly, that's sort of what happened with Hillary, right? Like, Trump, I think Trump won Michigan, right? Was it Michigan that he won?
I can't remember.
He won a couple of those swing states. And, like, everybody was like, why the hell did he win Michigan? Or what? It may not have been Michigan, but...
that's why I'm going to go to all of the 57 states when I'm running for president. Also, I'm going to make it be 57 states.
Oh, cool. What are the other 7?
You'll find out.
Aw.
That's listen, I got to have some kind of draw for my campaign.
Oh, so you're doing like you're doing a rollout, basically.
Yeah, I'm doing like a, just wait and see.
Once a month.
Vote for me. You get a new state.
Oh, I was going to say, like, once a month you reveal the state, E3 style.
Oh my god. Like, in front. Yeah. Ooh, that's good.
All of a sudden, East Dakota.
East Dakota. Except that it's, like, in Europe. And we don't actually own it, but we're going to say that we own it.
Oh, that's an interesting strategy.
But we don't actually own it.
I don't know the legality of that.
Nobody go tell them that we have it, but it's totally ours.
Where in Europe is East Dakota?
You'll find out.
Oh, damn it.
You'll find out. 2020.
2020.
2020.
20
We're
Lidi.
seeing clearly in 2020.
Lidi 20.
Lidi 20. Oh my god, it writes itself.
It's way better.
It writes itself. My campaign slogan is that we're seeing clearly. But I wear glasses.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I don't actually have 2020. Please help.
We've hit a snag.
Hit a snag.
This is the only snag.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about is coverage bias.
Okay.
Now this one, you know how they often say like the smartest solution seems the most obvious when people put it that way?
Razor?
Yeah. Coverage bias is fascinating. I bet the first person who thought about it felt so fucking smart. Basically, and it seems obvious now, but it's a fairly new discovery, the method of taking polls can actually skew the results. For example, if pollsters are rolling through an automated telephone service, people being polled must have a home telephone, and be home to answer these polls.
True.
This is assumption of wealth and will skew the results. So I didn't know this.
Oh.
I didn't know this until writing this episode. It is illegal in the U.S. for automated telephone services to call a cell phone.
Huh. In every state in the U.S.?
Yes, it's a United States federal law.
Wow.
Because people might have to pay for it.
Oh.
And you can't make them pay for a call they don't want. So...
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So it's actually illegal for these like roll-through services to do an automated call to your cell phone.
Oh, that's why sometimes you have to sign up.
Yeah.
For if you like pledge your support behind a candidate, you have to sign up, and then they have the right to call you.
Yep.
I guess.
But that's and that was actually coverage bias is like a really new thing. It's kind of the oh god, everything is coverage bias now kind of thing in poll. I was gonna say poll media, but that's not right. Poll culture, I guess.
Poll science.
Yeah, in the poll nerds, which is the name of a strip club Reddit of fans.
Poll nerds, yeah.
Poll nerds is very good.
Strip club full of nerds.
Yes, my dream. And I don't know.
Are they in the audience or on the stage?
Both.
In this? Okay.
Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, right. So coverage bias.
That got you. Okay.
So coverage bias is like really started amping up in 2004, I think, when a significant portion of the United States had only cell phones. So that's really what made people discover this, is like, oh shit, we're not surveying people with only cell phones. And now that number is larger than ever.
Right.
I don't have a home phone.
Yeah.
Like, I have no use for a home phone, but that would negate me from being pulled from something like this.
So that's a really good question, right? Is like a lot of, I guess, quote unquote, millennials and young people that can vote now receive all of their information through like social media and through the internet. We don't really we don't do printed ads. We don't do radio or TV ads that much. So that's kind of an interesting thing, is you kind of get your like 20 seconds of a political ad before a YouTube video before you skip it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, that's a whole new playground where they have to learn how to reach a younger audience as opposed to calling them on a house phone.
Right. But it's interesting because polls, there's a difference between like the campaign reaching them and then pollsters reaching them, which is a whole different thing, because they, you may feel strongly about a certain candidate, but if no one ever polls you, then no one's ever going to know.
Yeah.
So I think that's really kind of wild. So another factor similar to the Bradley effect is known as the spiral of silence.
Which is awesome.
Which is probably the coolest thing we're going to talk about. The spiral of science theory... Sorry, let me start that again. The spiral of silence theory is a political science and mass communication theory proposed by the German political scientist Elisabeth Noelle Neumann. This is again from Wikipedia.
Okay.
Which stipulates that individuals have a fear of isolation, which results from the idea that a social group or the society in general might isolate, neglect, or exclude members due to the members' opinions. This fear of isolation consequently leads to remaining silent instead of voicing opinions. Media is an important factor that relates to both the dominant idea and people's perception of the dominant idea. The assessment of one's social environment may not always correlate with reality.
Okay.
What this all means, I'm going to put it in perspective of the Trump-Clinton campaign again.
Yeah.
If you think that you're the only one in your group who's going to vote for Trump, right? Mm-hmm. Then you are going to feel isolated from media, because media was pretty pro-Clinton in all regards. Or at least some media was. Some media wasn't, obviously. But you're going to isolate yourself from media. You're going to isolate yourself from anyone calling about it. You're going to isolate yourself from your friends.
Your family.
Yes. And that's all going to be deafening, especially when it comes to polls.
Yeah.
So if someone calls you about it, you're either going to say, I'm not voting.
Yeah.
Or I'm not interested, or whatever.
Yeah. You're not going to want to be part of it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So there's also... The spiral of science is fascinating. Silence. I keep saying science because it's political science. The spiral of silence is really wild, because it kind of shows how someone can be under the radar. Mm-hmm. For example, David Duke has run for many political offices, and everyone who ever supported him never said anything, obviously, because you don't want to be tied to a Klansman. And so he had, I forget who it was that wrote it, but they were like, he's under the radar. And that's what that means, because like, people are going to vote for him, but no one's going to tell you who's voting for them. It's almost like a secret society in a way. And the last point I want to talk about is independence.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, independent, and I'm sorry for saying this, independence in a national scale spoil elections. So the way this works is, I'm not going to bring up any specific independent candidates, but if you have an independent that leans, let's say, liberal, right? Leans Democrat. Anyone who votes for that independent is probably not voting, would probably, if given a two-party system, would vote for the Democrat, but they have their independent. Basically, that is a vote cast for the conservative.
Yeah.
Because they're just taking a vote away. There's not been, in the modern two-party system, an independent president. So the odds of them winning is very small.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it could happen. It could always happen. Yep. Democracy's cool that way. But usually independents hate this, by the way. Gary Johnson got really, really mad one time when somebody was like, what do you think about the thought that you're playing spoiler to the election or whatever? And he like yelled at him and took his off his tie. He got real mad.
Oh, geez.
But it's true. It is true. And polls with independents are very interesting, because people will say, people people are idealists usually, and I don't know what is going on with my phone. People are idealists usually, and that will skew them to think like, oh, this independent could win.
Right.
Let's give him a chance.
Bernie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, yes, people wanted Bernie after he lost the nomination, which was crazy. But even like Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. Yeah. So these, as much as I love the idea of an independent, it's scary when it comes to polls, because if you poll for an independent, and if you vote for an independent, kinda, you are playing a different game.
Yeah.
You're not choosing either of the teams, you're picking the ref. Like, it's a very strange world to live in.
I had family members that voted independent or third party, or Green Party, third party, whatever.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to choose one of the major candidates.
Yes.
And I remember at the time I was so angry because I was like, just make a decision.
Yeah.
Like, you know what you made the effort to go vote.
Right.
And you know what you're doing is going, nah, I'm not going to be part of it.
Yeah.
Which makes me sad. But...
And it's almost the equivalent, and I'm not going to say this, but I'm not saying this seriously, but it's almost the equivalent of voting for Cookie Monster, right?
Well, people write in Bugs Bunny.
Right, exactly. That is just
Mickey Mouse and stuff like that.
Unless there is an independent candidate that gets some serious fire behind them, then it's almost the same thing, right? Like it's a vote that's a non-vote. Yeah. And the reason
protest vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up is because polls usually skew one way or the other, right? It's a lot of times polls, and some of the errors in polls are because it's a binary choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Red or blue. Yeah. And when people throw green in there, it just gets muddy.
Yeah.
And polls are, and a lot of times independents, or at least in the Clinton-Trump race, seem to lose steam toward the vote.
Yeah.
Because they run out of money a lot of times or whatever. And that is actually really scary, because people who would have polled for them might not poll for them toward the end.
Yeah.
And then they're in no man's land.
They're just there.
Yeah. Who are they going to vote for?
Not to knock anybody's like political affiliation.
My roommate is an independent. He voted for an independent. We've had this discussion before. We disagree on it. But, again, I'm not trying to dismiss anyone, but from a statistical standpoint, the likelihood of an independent winning is very small.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
That actually played a really big part in the Gore-Bush election.
I don't know what you're talking about. Ralph Nader is my president, and he always will be. So,
but he won like 20% of whatever his home state was, Arizona, I think.
Yeah, he was trying. He was doing it.
And he was the best independent we've ever had, and all he did was basically get Bush elected and not Al Gore.
All he did was make some really good SNL skits for a while.
Yes, exactly, right. So I didn't mean to get too political, but I think it's worth noting that however idealist independent is, and it's totally your right if you want to register or vote as an independent. Yeah. I would suggest you don't register as independent, though, because you don't get to caucus then, and you should caucus.
Caucus the poll.
Yeah. Caucus is a fun word. But yeah, that's totally your right, and I'm not gonna diss you for it. But well, that's something you said, huh?
I tried to do a goof, and it did bad. It was a bad one.
But anyway. On that oddly dark note.
If nothing else, vote.
Yes, please vote.
Just
vote for who you believe in.
Just vote, yeah. If you want to protest, vote. If you want to vote because you believe in your third party, if you want to write in Daffy Duck, whatever, just vote.
And be honest with pollsters, because their job is hard.
Yeah, just vote. Just do this one thing.
Rock the vote. You remember that?
I do remember that. Was
P. Diddy?
P. Diddy was part of that.
Yeah.
And it was like a whole big thing on MTV.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers were, I think.
It was a whole big thing. I remember. Yeah. Man. I was so excited the first year I got to vote in a presidential election.
Yeah, me too.
I was so hyped because I was like, I can actually...
Mine was this one.
Do something. God, you're 10. I forgot you just turned 18.
I was a year away from Obama the second time.
I forgot you just turned 18 now. But it was like, that was a big deal. Like that. I remember thinking that I took that very seriously.
Yeah.
And I wanted very desperately to make change and to do stuff. And then the world was like, cute.
Also, very important, go vote in your local elections.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Yeah, a lot of people won't because they don't think it's a big deal.
Yes, especially like any Senate or like any House of Representatives, any of those elections, please vote.
Looking at you, McConnell.
They matter, and you should vote every time you have a chance to vote. It is one of the only rights given to you as a citizen of the United States. This is a very domestic episode, and it's not going to play well overseas. But
it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, sorry UK.
Sorry Canadians.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, Moon.
But as part of a bicameral legislature, that is your prerogative to fill both of those houses with who you think is right. So
yeah, even if we disagree.
Yeah, no.
I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it.
That's it.
Polling.
How exciting was polling?
That was I actually, like I said, I knew nothing, so I learned a lot. And I got to have opinions about things.
Yeah, we got a little political there.
We did get a little political.
Sorry, Gary Johnson.
That was sorry, man. Sorry, Gare.
Sorry there, Gare.
Sorry, Gare.
Do you remember when Gary Johnson spoke, bit his tongue when he spoke that one time?
Okay.
When he was like, it's not even that far off.
Didn't something else come out about him where he said some really stupid stuff?
Oh, he couldn't name 3. What was it?
I can't see.
He couldn't name the 3. He wanted to get rid of departments in the U.S. government, and he couldn't name 3 of them.
Legislative.
Well, no. He wanted to name he wanted to get rid of Department of Education and Department. He's he couldn't name because he's one of the Gary Johnson was one of those people that was government should be so small you could drown in a bathtub. That's a often libertarian thing to say.
Oh, he was Ron Swanson.
Sure, I don't know.
Yeah, Ron Swanson doesn't believe in government. He's always trying to disband the government.
Gotcha. But he said
Parks and Rec.
He said the first thing he would do as president is get rid of 3. I think I may be misquoting, but I think this is what happened. Get rid of 3 departments within the presidential cabinet. And someone asked him what would those 3 be, and he couldn't come up with 3.
Didn't he get mad about it because he's like, "Well,
he got very defensive.
I know what I'm talking about," and all this stuff, and it's I don't know if you do.
Yep.
I don't know if you do, my dude.
Politics now.
Which, granted, that would be tough.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That would be incredibly difficult to stand in front of a group of people that are judging you for your intelligence and for your position and for your ability to lead a country.
Yeah.
That would be incredibly intimidating and scary to, I'm sitting here, mocking it, but I couldn't do it.
Sure. But also, you're not running for president.
Well,
be prepared.
Yeah.
Martin O'Malley 2020. But, yeah, it's a wild, wild world of politics. I hope that if we disagree politically... Yeah.
Wiki wild, wild, political.
How long are you going to go?
I'm going to stop there.
Okay, all right.
I don't have to prove to you that I know the song. You already know I know the song. I do
know that. But even with disagree politically, I think that everyone agrees that the polls were wrong. Obviously, the polls were wrong.
Yeah.
No matter who you support, it doesn't matter. Polls were wrong.
Yeah.
And you can view that as an upset, or they can view it as, something
that is an
wrong.
Archaic way of doing it.
Yeah.
I don't, how else would we do it?
Online. Give us online polling.
Online. Could that be broken?
Well, no, I guess because that skews toward people who have internet access.
Yeah.
I guess door to door, maybe.
And we've
I don't
already
know.
seen the electronic machines weren't really reliable, and then paper ballots can be forged.
The pregnant ballot.
They can be forged, and
pregnant ballot.
I don't know. Line every person up in the U.S. and say, "Who you voting for? Back of the line. Who you voting for? Back of the line."
Oh no, we're twins. Oh God.
Oh God.
Have we asked you yet?
Another way to break the system.
What?
You got twins showing up.
Oh,
One person shows up wearing a different outfit, comes back. You talk to my brother. I'm a different guy.
I'm different guy.
Hi,
it's me, different H guy.
I'm James Different Guy. And I'm...
different. It's Italian.
I'm James Different Guy.
Terrificante.
And I'm... No, because then you get kicked out because they got an accent.
Oh, Jesus, that got dark.
Welcome to our current America.
Welcome to America.
This is America.
Yeah.
No, you immediately get pushed to the end of the line.
Lidi, where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/Team Lidi. Where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/DormStreams.
We also have Snapchat,
Twitter,
Instagram,
Discord,
T-shirts.
Damn it, I was going to go that way.
I feel like it's whoever gets to start it.
YouTube.
It's the tic-tac-toe method.
Right, yeah.
Right? It's once we get to the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's once you get to the end of it, there's no more answers, and so that person automatically wins. It's the game that you play with the baseball.
Oh, yeah. Does that game have a name?
I don't know. It's to decide at the very... This is probably a super regional thing that people just went, What is she doing this for?
Yeah,
how many hands does it take to get to the top?
Top it off.
You got to bop it back down sometime.
Bop it, twist it.
Bop it, twist it. Ow. Oh, nope. Man, remember bop its though? Mm-hmm. What about skip-its? Remember skip-its?
Yeah, I do.
Man, I'm old.
Bop-its are great.
Bop-its were marvelous. And didn't they come out with something else after that? They had a Bop It, and then they had a Bop It Extreme.
Oh yeah, I do remember Bop It Extreme. Was that the one you like throw?
Flick it.
Yeah.
They had a flick.
Oh, like the little bean, like.
Well,
that's what it looked like.
Well,
until
where
next.
Else can people find
no, we already did that.
Is that it?
Until next time.
I'm trying to palate cleanse.
Until next time. There it is. This is a weird one.
No, this was a good one.